Hi and welcome to the Homeopathy Health Show. I'm Atik Ahmad-Bhatti, a fourth-generation homeopath with over 25 years of professional experience and practice in this field of healing. The Homeopathy Health Show is the online voice of homeopathy around the world, promoting and raising awareness of this truly unique system of healing, which is suitable for all ages, young and old. Every week I invite guests from the world of homeopathy to come and share their experiences, their work, offer insights, and essentially talk all things homeopathy. Why not visit www.liketreatslike.co.uk and click on the radio and podcast button to listen to the latest episodes. So let's begin today's show here on UK Health Radio, the world's #1 talk health radio. Hi and welcome to another episode of the Homeopathy Health Show here on UK Health Radio, and I'm your host, Atik Ahmad-Bhatti. Now I am thrilled to welcome my guest on the show, Ian White, who is the founder of the Australian Bushflower Essences and a fifth-generation Australian herbalist. Ian White graduated from the University of New South Wales with a Bachelor of Science before completing degrees in naturopathy, herbal medicine and homeopathy, and has been practicing successfully as a naturopath since 1979. Ian White, fifth-generation herbalist and, of course, founder of the Australian Bushflower Essences. It's a sheer delight and joy to welcome you to the Homeopathy Health Show today.
Thank you very much for having me, Atik.
You know, I've for the listeners out there, I've been wanting to speak to Ian for a very, very long time. And hey, that day has arrived, so it's going to be a really, really great show. I promise you that. Ian, you know, the history that you have is truly remarkable and also very blessed and also fascinating. And you mentioned that your great-grandmother actually worked as a herbalist during Australia's gold rush in the 1850s. So do you have any stories rather that have been passed down of what it was actually like at that time to be a herbalist in Australia?
It was actually my great-great-grandmother, and this was in the 1850s. And you know, the stories coming down was just that alcohol was rife, that a lot of the miners weren't making anything, so it was, nutrition was quite poor. So there was a lot of digestive things. There was a lot of injuries, you know, sort of to the hands, minor ones, whacking them, you know, hitting hands with picks and what have you. A few fights breaking out. So shovels. Yeah, there were quite a few challenging things going on there in the gold mine for her to be able to get supplies for all the herbs to treat too. It was interesting.
And of course, having been passed down to your grandmother as well, which is something even more fascinating because, I mean, what was that like? What was it like for you to have that experience of going out with your grandmother and learning about, you know, the beauties of, or the healing properties and beauties of plants and flowers? You know, as a young boy, what were your initial thoughts? What do you think about? I mean, was this something that you were interested in because you were going out, or was it something that developed over time as far as the interest into the botanical properties?
I really liked it that as we'd walk, she'd point out all the various plants and what their qualities were. So it was, I really enjoyed that there was this another layer toward the plants, of course, then helping her make up the fluid extracts and the tinctures as well. So you'd see how that was transferred herbally from growing and then ending up in these concoctions and brown liquids or the tinctures, which are a lot clearer. And it was just wonderful being out in the bush. I much preferred spending time with her than going to school. In fact, I developed the ability to bring on horrendous abdominal pains Monday to Friday. I'd usually wait for my dad, who was a pharmacist as well as a herbalist, to go off to work, and you know, I'd come doubled up the pain to my mother and pleading that I wanted to go to school. And she said, oh, no, you're far too sick. You better spend the day with your grandmother, who lived next door. Though to get next door, you had to climb down a cliff, or there was quite a big dirt road leading down to her. And I think she enjoyed my company. So, when my mum would come back from work in the afternoon, and she'd ask my grandmother, oh, how was Ian? And she said, oh, gradually he got better during the day. And of course, as soon as I realized mum would have left for work, it was like pain's gone, back out in the bush and, doing nice things, walking, preparing the tinctures and hanging out with her, just far more exciting than school. So, it's lovely being out in nature, and then having that understanding of the various layers of what you see apart from just the beauty of the plants.
Fascinating. How many years or how long was that period that you spent? Was it throughout your childhood as such?
Well, unfortunately, my grandmother was a heavy smoker, and unbeknown to the family, even when I was born, her body was quite riddled with cancer. Now, she kept it at bay with a number of herbs. There were Western herbs like phytolacca and sorrel, but there were other herbs that she was working with, Australian plants. And then when I was nearly turning 8, she went traveling to Europe. Her bags got lost, and in the bags were all her herbs she was using. So by the time my father was able to collect all the plants that she needed in the right phase and get it across to her, the stress of traveling, she got very ill, went into a coma and was flown back to Australia. And so she died when I was had just turned 8. And unfortunately, none of that information was written down. So it was a big part of from my memories, really, from 4 up until 7, really, of being with her and talking about the plants.
That must have been a very difficult time, because from reading about your background and, of course, what you're sharing here, there's a special link, there's a special love going out with your grandma anyhow. But the fact that together you were going out, you were finding plants, you were, making herbal tinctures, and you were being taught. So that must have been a very difficult time for you as well. And then looking ahead itself about, how you're going to take this forward, how you're going to carry her work forward.
Yes, well, it was a real loss. It was quite a change, then just having that influence removed. Fortunately, where we grew, the bush was right there. Our properties backed onto national park, so it was still that ability to go out and be in the bush. And none of her information, and my great grandmother, along with my grandmother, were some of the first white people looking at the medicinal properties of Australian plants. And very little of that information has come through. I mean, I didn't have the memory of, oh, this plant is really good for that. As I got older, some of that went. Plus, it was a little bit more herbal. And my research has been looking at carrying on that tradition, but looking at more the emotional, spiritual healing qualities of the plants. Of course, there are the physical ones as well, but by looking at the flowers as a vibrational one, as opposed to staying more just directly with the herbal.
That's quite interesting, because obviously that's going to lead me to asking you about homeopathy. You have graduated from the University of New South Wales, and you have a bachelor degree in science, and you have degrees in naturopathy, herbal medicine, and homeopathy. So are you still using homeopathy? Because the principles and the vibrations that you're speaking about are very much related to the principles of homeopathy itself.
Yes, well, I was doing my science degree and got quite ill traveling through Asia in the summer holidays there, and physically quite and emotionally quite. And started working with yoga, Tai Chi, got back involved in herbal medicine, and I tried in my last year to combine natural therapies with my science degree. And when I finished the degree, I realized, well, the main thing I'm interested in is natural healing. So I then went and there was only one full-time course back in the 70s in naturopathy and homeopathy in Australia. So I did that one. And, I really liked the idea of flower essences, which I, had obviously studied. It was only the English ones available at that time. And I liked that anyone could use it. But, predominantly I was a homeopath. Basically, the story was that a friend of mine I'd shared a house with as a student told me that he'd been diagnosed with bowel cancer. This was a young, charismatic, healthy, apparently very healthy person, and wanted to, ask me if I'd do a healing circle before they operated the next day. So all our mutual friends came, we did that. And, unfortunately, they said there was nothing the doctors could do. It was spread everywhere through his liver, etc. So I continued the healing circle on a weekly basis. And there was a meditation section in there. And in the meditations, shortly after he died, a number of months later, I started getting pictures of plants, told where to go and make them up and what their healing qualities were. And if I didn't know the plant, then there'd be a little caption underneath with the botanic name. Now, I said, I was in practice, and, so I'd be going out in the morning making the essences, and the patients I'd be seeing that afternoon, evening, or the next day all needed that remedy. So it was the synchronicity I was on the right track, and also gave me the opportunity to observe the results. And, it was very exciting. The plants the essences working very quickly. So during the first 2-year period, doing a lot of research, I was giving it off to homeopathic friends, to doctors, some naturopaths to use, see if they could replicate the results. And, so basically they could, and started publishing the information. And, I suppose it really took over my practice and became the main focus. And I've got hit by a surfboard when I was out body surfing in Australia before this trip. I'm currently in Europe teaching, and it hadn't been responding so well. So I've been taking silica. Now I'm not in full-time practice anymore. I still see some patients do a few Zoom calls just because it's you don't want to totally give everything up that you're trained in. And, probably the homeopathic. So I'm not repetizing as I did when I was in full-time practice, but, there'll be occasions where I still think, okay, you go and need this remedy. Like one of my colleagues at the office hurt her shoulder. So, she's got some symphytum, she's got eupatorium for bone pain. And, so I suppose it's been narrowed down, but I still think homeopathic's wonderful.
That's a really, really interesting, really interesting background indeed. But the Australian bushflower essences, now you have been looking at these amazing essences, and these are the Australian bushflower essences for over 35 years now. You're the founder of the Australian bushflower essences. Now, starting off with something like that requires an incredible amount of commitment and devotion and love and compassion for healing itself. How did you find that? I mean, how does that work where you're in Australia, let's say, and what led you to which plants is a question. How did you go about this? Was it very systematic, or was it just trial and error, hours and hours of research, or was it through meditation that you were led to certain plant species and so forth?
Well, like I mentioned, it was most of it was coming through in the meditation in the early days, and occasionally it would be dreams. Sometimes I'd be a dream of a plant, and then would know that plant, would be able to follow up and doing the research on it. The Paracelsus really championed a term called doctrine of signatures, and where the shape, color, location of the plant are the clues nature's giving to the healing quality. So certainly incorporating that aspect very much, as well as that more direct inner guidance and communication with the plants as well. And sometimes, like I've been looking at a book and say Book of Flowers, and one will really jump out, and it's like very much thinking, oh, okay, this needs to be done. Now, as you mentioned, it's been over 35 years I've been doing the bush essences. Earlier this year, I released the first new bush essence flower. There's been a few spiritual remedies, but it's the first new flower in 19 years. And that's because rather than, I'm bored, there's nothing to do, there's nothing on Netflix, I think I'll go out and make a flower essence. It's more waiting for the plant to communicate to me when it's ready to be made up. So, there's a couple of flowers I've got information about, I'm doing research. But each year I get, no, it's not the right time. It's not the right time. So it's very much that intuitive part of working with the plant and being open to any communication.
That's actually a really, really important point, because as a homeopath, I know, as far as intuition is concerned, that sometimes you repertoire and you think, oh, okay, it's going to be this remedy, or it's this is the remedy that's being shown, for example. Or you open up the Materia Medica and you think, okay, this is the remedy. But I found so many times, and certainly this is, of course, the case with yourself here as well, that when I go to actually prepare the remedy, excuse me, the thought that comes into my heart and my mind, and you think, actually, it's not that. It's going to be the other one, even though it's completely opposite, perhaps, to what the diagnosis would be and what the remedy itself, the indicated remedy is as such. And that's actually fascinating. It's always fascinated me, because you mentioned here that the time was not right, and it's based on intuition, and that you're given this guidance. And I think that's so important, because with what you're doing and what you've achieved so far, the fact that there are certain times for certain remedies, which then are the remedies of that time almost, is so important. And it's the ability to be at one with nature. And it's also, Ian, very much to do with yourself as a result of being a custodian. A fifth generation herbalist is it's not just small talk. And it's a great honor, and to be able to be a custodian of that, to be able to carry that on, I think is extremely admirable. And I have to ask you here, as far as intuition is concerned, though, what was your first few experiences, and how did you feel at that time? Did you feel you were being guided, or did you feel that, oh, this is me, or maybe maybe I read this somewhere and that's why I'm thinking about this?
Well, for me, it's I suppose I could call it, there's a magic when you come to making the essences. And so there's the mechanical aspect, but how things unfold. For example, I received information about Waratah, which is the logo that we use for the company. And Waratah was the only flower that the Aborigines gave to the early white settlers, because it was their highest flower. And I got this information, which was right at the end of the flowering season on the coastal areas where I live. And 2 hours inland from Sydney, there is what's called the Great Dividing Range, and it's a higher altitude. It's colder, therefore the flowers are coming into bloom a little bit later. And there was a professor of botany who was, I was able to track down, asked about the Waratah, and he had contacts for a family who renowned for having some of the last flowering Waratahs in the state. And when I got information about what the Waratah did, I really didn't want to have to wait till the following year to have it. I thought this is an important remedy. And so because I came through the professor, they were willing to share the area where they thought I might be able to find some. But they said they'd been there about a week, 10 days earlier, because they had a license to pick them, and there had been a papal tour, and they had been asked to provide Waratahs for, on display and for the mass and what have you. And they said, well, look, we were there about a week, 10 days ago, and there was none left in flower, but you're welcome to go there and have a look. And, I was in full-time practice. There was I was able to, change a number of appointments. So I was able to set up a day where I could go a few days later. Unfortunately, the weather forecast changed, and then looked like it was bad rain. And that night it was saying it was going to be raining heavily all day. And I thought, oh, is it worth going? Because it was about 2.5 hour drive. Anyway, I thought that night I had a meditation. I saw this beautiful Waratah, and I thought, oh, that's a good omen. I'm going. So I woke up pouring with rain in Sydney, still heavy rain when I got to the location. And there were, walking around that area, there were, about 100 different Waratahs. But when I got excited, but when I got close, you could see that they'd passed their peak in flowering, and you really need a flowering peak bloom.
Right.
And after wandering around for about an hour, I came across a creek down into a gully, and there was an identical plant. The markings on the stem were the same that I'd seen the night before. And so I sat down and was just meditating with the flower, and suddenly there was a break just where I was. There was a diameter of about 3 meters, 9-10 feet, where suddenly the clouds had broken, and there was it was stopped raining, and there was a shaft of sunlight came through, and maybe about 20-30 meters away, the rain was still coming down. And I was like, well, this is a bit weird. Anyway, so I pulled all my equipment out and prepared the essence, and it takes about 2.5-3 hours. And just at that point, after the essence was complete, I was taking the Waratah out. The sky went black, and it started with incredibly heavy rain. Situations like that, synchronicity happens so often that it's, it's very special. I've just finished teaching, we call it a level 3 workshop. I've taught it in Switzerland, France, and Italy in the last few weeks. And the reason I put this workshop together is for people to experience that magical interconnection with not just nature, but it's also the spirit realm as well when an essence is created. And so as a group, we make up an essence together. And it's things like that which really inspire me to continue the work and make it so rewarding, let alone getting the feedback from people saying, oh, I've used this essence and it's really helped me or my friend's family. And even a chat with you, you're saying, wow, I get some great results with, some of the remedies. I mean, to me, that's the impetus to keep going with the work, because that's really what it's all about.
That's a fascinating insight, into how you go about this process, and I think it's quite inspiring for anyone listening. That the beauty here is that as a herbalist, you're directly involved. You're touching those plants or flowers. You're actually making the essences by hand yourself, and then you're utilizing them for healing, and I think that's just amazing. And I as you were saying that, I was just picturing you, and I was trying to picture you sitting there in that gully, and the clouds perhaps that dissipating slightly, and the rain stopping, and that was soothing in itself, and that's quite a magical story, but it's a very true story.
Yeah. And it's my wife and I, we traveled together to prepare the essences, and it's an interesting journey because we make essences from all around Australia. And, sometimes I don't grow the plants. I want to find them growing in the wild because they have to have a strong life force to survive drought, floods, fires, etc. And, there's one which would certainly appeal to people listening here called the Boab, which I'll mention briefly in a moment. But to get there, it's a 5-hour flight to the other side of the country. Then there's a waiting time, a connecting 3-hour flight to fly into what area in the northwest. And from there, it's a 2.5-hour drive to find the Boab tree. Now, I go to that area to make some other plans, but the Boab flowers just at the beginning of the wet season, which is in Australia, which is that, say, December through to February. And there was one year we did all that, and the boab was very late coming into flower that year. So, like we've flown for 8 hours and we've been driving for 3 hours, and it wasn't going to be any flowers. I had to sort of come back and without any results. So or sometimes there's a couple of areas in the very center of Australia where it gets very hot. In fact, it was 47 degrees temperature when I made boab up the recently, and you're loaded up like a pack horse, because you've got all your bowls, you've got water, the brandy, beakers, etc. And sometimes you're walking for 3 hours in the heat, getting to those areas where you're going to find those plants. So it's there's I said that commitment, but there's a real passion to be out in nature, to be working with those plants, and see the results coming back of what they can do. It certainly stimulates me to continue that.
I think, Ian, the fact that the Australian bush flower essences work so well is a large majority of it is, of course, it's down to the vibrational healing properties of the flower itself, but it's also to do with you to spend that much time and that much love and commitment. The thing is that you have to have love for humanity to help humanity as far as healing is concerned, to be able to spend the amount of time that you do. And this story that you've just related, or this example, is the truth to that, to spend hours and hours to go and find something which perhaps you may not be able to on a bad day, let's say, but then to stay committed and to go back. That commitment and that dedication is that is what results, also in success, because you've worked hard, and there has to be this inner drive and passion for healing to be able to, to make such a big effort. I mean, you ask any other Joe Blogs to go and make that much effort, and it's like, oh, no chance, But the fact that you're able to do that is really amazing. I just find it's, as you were saying that, I was thinking that people like Dr. Hahnemann and the great homeopaths and others as well in the world of healing spent similar amounts of time. They were meticulous, as you very well know, in writing out the signatures of the properties related to the sources that they had, the plants and minerals. And you're doing this as we speak, in the 21st century. And that's just, hats off to you and congratulations, because I think that really deserves to be spoken about. What you're doing it's really humbling as well, to be honest with you, because it's such a nice feeling to know, and dare I say it, but because of the effort that you're putting in, I think the bush flower essences are always going to be successful, whichever one you add in the future, because of this itself.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, you give some wonderful acknowledgements. And for me, I feel like I've got the stewardship, so I really want to make sure that I'm presenting it in the very best way and do what it takes to get them out there. And last year, we had a few days off, and we were traveling in the far northeast of Australia. It's a tropical area, right opposite the Barrier Reef. And on our very last day, we came across this tree called Calophyllum. Now, it's not the homeopathic remedy spelt C-A-U-L, Calophyllum. This is Calophyllum. And, this was the one that's the first new one in 19 years, and it was very clear that this was an essence needing to be made. Now, I didn't have the equipment with me, and we're in a very isolated area in the middle of the rainforest, so I wasn't able to make it. So I did a lot of, tuning in, got a lot of information, and I decided I'd come back the next year, which was this year, and prepare it. Now, I hadn't been able to travel to Europe for 4 years because of all the travel restrictions with COVID, etc. So this year it's quite a long one. It's a 3-month teaching trip, and a lot of preparation beforehand. And, I was thinking, oh, look, I just don't have the time to go up and make this essence. Plus, I'm not sure if it's going to be in flower. And I knew it would definitely be finished flowering when I get back in mid-July. But I got a very strong message that, it's got to be made, find the time. And so again, it's like a 3-hour flight, then another 3-hour drive to get to this location. We're not sure if it's going to be there, and you need enough time, because if it's rainy, you can't make the essence. You need sunshine. So you need a few backup days in case the weather's not good. And interesting that one of the qualities of this essence is, it really is enhancing leadership, but it's taking you out of the comfort zone. Like, oh, I could make it next year, it'd be much easier. But sometimes you need to be pushed to get out of that little, take your comfy shoes off and do what needs to be done. And it was interesting. That was part of the experience with this essence.
Again, as you say this, I think perhaps, when you're involved with something so heavily, it perhaps sometimes, one can become quite accustomed, but it takes a step back sometimes to look at what you're achieving and to observe it. And again, I say to you that to spend that much time and that much commitment, I mean, the zeal that you have is amazing. The fact that you've got so much energy and may it well continue for years and years, to research and to actually have something literally on the table, that's going to last. Well, it's going to be there, isn't it? It's always going to be there. Once an essence is made, that's it. And that's another beauty of healing, isn't it? Because you're leaving essences for time immemorial as such, which everybody can benefit from.
Yes, well, we think of all the work Hahnemann did. I mean, those remedies are still available today, and all the early homeopaths, and it's that work, that legacy, which hopefully will continue both for homeopathy and the bush essences. Like I have a staff of over 20 people, yet I'm the one who will go and make the essences, because I really want to make sure that if I'm having a bad day and be involved in a car accident or an argument with the next door neighbor, then I'm not going to make the essence that day. So again, to maintain the integrity of the essences which are being made.
Amazing. Now, Ian, you mentioned about teaching and promoting, and that you are in Europe at this moment. At the time of this recording of this Homeopathy Health podcast, but you are doing these level 3 workshops. So how is that? Do tell us a bit more about what's involved and the courses that are available that you're involved with as far as teaching.
Well, there's the levels 1, 2, and 3. We basically divide which used to be 69s, now 70 of the essences. So we cover a third in each one. Plus, we'll go into great detail about each essence, how it can be used, understanding about the qualities of it. And there'll be some other techniques that we incorporate in there as well. So like the level 3 will have the making of an essence. I also teach age regression in there, how to work with the meridians. For example, we know that a lot of the homeopathic remedies will have that, worse in the evening or worse in the morning, etc., etc. So in Chinese medicine, there's the time zone. So between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. is heart. So, indicating that if you've got problems with the heart, it's going to show up and be worse during that time. So understanding meridians, how you can work with the essences topically, beginning at the end of the meridian. The level 2, it's a lot more working with the nature spirits, the Davic realm. There will be techniques to help with diagnosis. In level 1, we do, bushwalks, trust walks. Well, not so much bush in Europe, but we'll go out directly into the field, how to tune into the plants. And then there's a number of one-day workshops. I will have all the essences working on women, one for the men, one for children, so looking at from conception, the pregnancy, labor, early childhood, how the essence can be used in conjunction with that. We have one for mental health. dealing with, say, anxiety or depression, which essence is working there. A graceful aging one. And things that I've used in my practice, now not being a full-time practitioner, then like kinesiology was something that I work a lot with patients. So I've created a 2-day kinesiology workshop. My wife and I will teach people how to muscle test, and then how you can, different conditions you can test if a person has a problem with it, and then by working with the essence, how you can correct that. When I studied my naturopathy, I also studied numerology. So for every patient, I'll do their numerology chart, which is a very quick way to see a strength and challenge of someone, indicate what essences might be useful. So, there's 3 spiritual ranges of remedies, which are not made from flowers, but working at a different level. So there's this quite a repertoire, if you like, of different essences, and the workshops teaching people how they can be, how they can use them. And during COVID, because we weren't able to travel, we built a recording studio and offices in Sydney, and we, did, like many people, doing the broadcasting webinars. And the nice thing about that is now we have a record of everything I want to say is recorded, and people can access that even if they're not able physically to, come to a workshop somewhere.
Ian, you are very fortunate because your wife, Jane, accompanies you on many of the trips that you make. So that must be so nice, right? Because you're working together, and to have sort of your partner and your companion to help you, or vice versa, working together for this common objective, and teaching and sourcing the flowers themselves and doing the research. Do share. It must be such a delight, right?
It is. It's like that tremendous support and love that I get from Jane following on my path. And she's an accomplished musician. She's got her own career. She's the principal harpist in the opera in Sydney. And, to get the time off, there's the annual holidays, and she'll take some long service leave, but some of the, conductors saying, well, we don't want her, don't let her go. She's so good. We don't want to lose her. So every year is a little bit of a battle when we've been, traveling to do that. And, she's was always involved with healing herself. She was, before switching to music, she's from the United States. She was starting a medical degree, because she'd always been interested in healing. And with musicians, because they spend so much time practicing, especially when they're young, they often end up with, quite a few social problems because they're so isolated, not interacting a lot. Or they've got ergonomic problems with those instruments. When you're playing hour after hour every day, they're not really geared to, for the human body. So they get neck and shoulder problems. So she's always, healing. She was using flower essences, the Bach flowers, before she came to Australia, treating people. So it's nice that she's got that healing background, and loves nature. So, that's a great thing. And, we'll do co-teaching together when we're teaching kinesiology. And I've incorporated some of the healing that she does with her music. We have one of the white light essence remedies needs sound to help activate it. So, she's recorded with the principal violinist from the Sydney Symphony, a white light CD. So when people are taking that one of the remedies in that range, they're playing that CD at the same time. And we had a group of Brazilians came to Australia for a workshop just at the time we launched the white light, which was back in the beginning of 2000. So Jane and Kirsty played a little concert for them. And see all the Brazilians walking out the end when the concert was over, just tears flooding down their face. So it's really nice how we can weave in her music and also her passion for nature and for healing into my work.
As a healer, and for the listeners today, I would say, that nowadays it's very quick to raise objections about something, or even people may even say, oh, plants don't have pain and this and that. But I tell you one thing, of course, you're going to agree with this, Ian, as a herbalist and as a healer, that look, plants and flowers and nature was around well before man was around, before humankind was there. So, to denounce something without any proof sometimes is not the right way. This is not how we're supposed to be, how we're supposed to think, because these things were always there. These plants and minerals and other resources, they were on this planet well before humankind. So who are we to then start questioning so much that, this is nonsensical, this is this. The only reason I think sometimes we are able to perhaps say such negative things is because we think we've advanced so much. And yet, here is proof that one individual can go in the bush and spend over 35 years in the outback and spend hours and hours researching plants, which are then used around the world, or essences, should I say, used around the world for healing. So, hey, what's that all about, So, yeah, that's just something I wanted to share.
Well, on one hand, you've got, I think most people would know that if they're not feeling well, just having a walk out in nature, they're going to feel so much better. And that's just a very empirical sense. Yet, we've got studies done. We do a combination which is called electro. And one of the main plants in that is called mulla mulla, which grows out in the very center in the hottest parts of Australia. And we, found that it's very good for radiation. Now, whether it's solar radiation, X-rays, it's gamma radiation, it's electromagnetic or nuclear. And most people will be familiar with Chernobyl, the 1986 nuclear disaster. The country that suffered the most was Belarus because of the direction of the wind. And Green Cross, which is an offshoot of Red Cross, looking at more environmental factors, every year they were doing testing of the children in Belarus. Even this is, sometimes even a decade or more after the nuclear action, before the children were born, monitoring the children who had the highest levels of nuclear radiation. And in the summer, they would take them to the Alps in Belarus, and they'd have cardiologists, neurologists, endocrinologists working with them with trying to reduce those radiation levels. We donated quite a lot of electros so they could do that work. And they found out that the electro was the most effective treatment they've ever come across for reducing the radiation in the children. It reduced it by 43% in 2 weeks.
Wow.
The next best treatment they'd ever come across was 21%. So it's really nice when there's we can do the testing as well as that's that thing of, well, I feel it, or the observation when from a practitioner's using remedies, they're getting results. So it's great that we can show that they're working on all these different levels. And we have teachers in different countries, and we have one of our teachers in Brazil, and she's in the state of Natal there. And she did a study with the University of Natal on children, 6-year-old children with behavioral problems. And the results were so good that the Natal state government paid her to train 400 counsellors, doctors, healthcare workers in using the bush essences. And the thing they liked about it was quite inexpensive, totally safe, and they got very good results. But it's just showing how the application, the essences, can work on many levels very effectively and without side effects, and for quite inexpensive.
It's simple, effective healthcare, isn't it? Literally simple, effective healthcare.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I like about it is you can have people who haven't done their years of training in homeopathy or medicine or naturopathy, but they can recognize that, their child's, like feeling very down because they didn't get invited to the birthday party all the other friends did, or the pet dog has died, and they're really going through a lot of sadness and grief, so that they're quite straightforward what they can match in essence to treat that person with.
Ian, I was going to ask you, with everything that's going on, do you actually get any time for any hobbies?
Well, one of my other passions is body surfing, and I'm very fortunate that where I live in Sydney is it's about an hour north of Sydney, and it's we look down on the ocean, and there's a group of men I go body surfing with all through the year, and there's probably about 15, and any morning there's probably about at least 5 or 6. We all down there going out and surfing together, and 3 of the men are in their 80s, quite a few in the 70s. I'm one of the younger ones at in my 60s. So that's certainly a nice balance of being physically active and having something that I love doing. And art's another one. One of the nice things about traveling is you get to see some beautiful art and go to galleries around the world, etc. So there's the challenge, I think, for a practitioner is you get so narrowed in your focus that maybe you only have friends associated in that healing area. So it's always good to try and broaden a little bit so you don't get too narrow in your focus.
Yeah, absolutely. So when is the autobiography out? I caught you off guard there, didn't I?
Well, look, there's always a few projects. There is not that particular one, but there are some other projects I've got for books, and we have a set of photos of all the flowers which you can use as a diagnostic tool. We've just revamped those. I've just rewritten one of my books, re-edited another one which is coming out. So there's always projects, certainly. Yeah.
You should write an autobiography, and you should call it perhaps okay, I can't think of the name, but I did actually have one, but I'm sure we need to hear a bit more. I think it would be wonderful to know more about this history that you have. I think it's amazing, and it's going to be an incredible read. So I will certainly look forward to that. And next time you're on the Homeopathy Health Show, hopefully early next year, I will ask you that same question, by the way.
All right. Thanks, Atik. You've
Ian,
like a gentle prod.
Yeah. It's been an absolute delight, honestly. I'm so happy that you were able to find time to come on the show today, because I had so many pressing questions, and I really wanted to engage and get your experiences and insights, as far as the bush flower essences are concerned, as far as your experiences are concerned. So thank you so much. And, it's been great.
Well, thanks, Atik, and I look forward to coming back next time, and we'll maybe go into some of this a little bit more specific essences next time. So if we do that for early next year, like you suggest, that would be, look forward to it.
I do hope you've enjoyed this week's episode of the Homeopathy Health Show. Please do support the show by clicking follow on my socials. Remember, the more exposure the podcast receives, the better for homeopathy around the world. You can find me on Instagram by searching for @like_treatslike, and on both Facebook and TikTok by searching for @like_treatslike. So let's promote the voice of homeopathy on radio and podcast around the world together. Don't forget to visit me online at www.liketreatslike.co.uk and click on the radio and podcast tab. Here you'll be able to see all the guests that have joined me on the show so far, and of course you can stream on demand the latest episode to your mobile, tablet or PC. Until next time, stay safe and take care.